Have you ever felt the invisible forces of darkness lurking in the corners of your home? Despite your best efforts to create a sanctuary of peace, you lock your doors at night, install security systems, and take every precaution to protect your physical dwelling, yet something remains vulnerable: your spiritual home. Father Pio, with his profound mystic gifts and spiritual insight, revealed a powerful truth that has transformed thousands of lives. The key of Saint Benedict is not merely a religious object, but a celestial shield against the forces that seek to disturb your peace and corrupt your soul. This sacred key, when properly consecrated and placed correctly in your home, creates an invisible barrier that evil cannot penetrate, a divine protection that many have experienced but few truly understand. Before I reveal this secret that has transformed the lives of thousands of people, you need to understand something very important about this teaching from Father Pio. The stigmatist saint, who bore the wounds of Christ for over 50 years, didn't speak of spiritual warfare as a distant concept, but as a daily reality he witnessed firsthand. With his ability to read souls and see beyond the veil of our physical world, Father Pio understood that every home is a battlefield where unseen forces compete for influence. The key of Saint Benedict isn't just another sacramental, it's a powerful weapon in this spiritual battle, one that Father Pio urgently wanted the faithful to utilize properly. Its power lies not in superstition but in genuine faith in the Church's blessing, activating a protection that has been documented in countless testimonies across centuries. The alert Father Pio raises isn't meant to frighten you but to awaken you to a spiritual reality many prefer to ignore. In an age where material security consumes our attention, spiritual protection often becomes an afterthought. Yet the saint from Pietrelcina witnessed how homes without spiritual safeguards became vulnerable to influences that gradually eroded peace, health, and harmony among family members. The key of Saint Benedict, when understood and used as Father Pio taught, doesn't just protect your walls and possessions, it creates a sanctuary where your soul can flourish and divine blessings can flow freely. As you continue reading, you'll discover not just the what and how of this powerful sacramental, but the profound why that makes it so essential for these challenging times we live in. Your home is more than just a physical structure. It's the environment where your spirit either thrives or withers, where your family either grows in harmony or fractures in conflict. Father Pio understood that the spaces we inhabit absorb the energy we generate, both positive and negative. The key of Saint Benedict works like a spiritual air purifier, constantly cleansing your home's atmosphere of harmful influences that accumulate over time. Many have placed this sacred key in their homes without fully understanding its power, missing the transformative protection it offers when properly consecrated and positioned. The difference between having the key as a mere decorative item versus a properly activated spiritual shield is like the difference between wearing a costume doctor's coat and receiving actual medical treatment. One is merely symbolic while the other produces real effects. The consecration process that Father Pio emphasized isn't a mere formality, but the essential activation of the key's protective power. When blessed by a priest, the key of Saint Benedict becomes charged with the Church's authority to repel evil, an authority that traces back to Christ himself. This blessing transforms the metal object into a conduit of grace, connecting your home to the powerful intercession of Saint Benedict, known for his victories over demonic forces. Father Pio would often tell visitors to his confessional that their homes remained vulnerable despite having religious objects because these items lacked proper consecration. The saint could spiritually perceive the difference between blessed and unblessed sacramentals, seeing the former surrounded by divine light and the latter as dormant objects waiting to be awakened to their spiritual purpose. Without this crucial step of consecration, the key remains a well-intentioned symbol rather than the active spiritual protection it's meant to be. Placement of the key of Saint Benedict is the second critical element that Father Pio emphasized in his teachings. The saint explained that the key should be placed near the main entrance of your home, where external energies, both human and spiritual, first enter your sacred space. This strategic positioning creates what Father Pio described as a spiritual checkpoint, where negative influences are immediately confronted with the key's protective power before they can penetrate deeper into your home. Many who follow Father Pio's guidance have reported an immediate and noticeable shift in their home's atmosphere. Arguments decrease, sleep improves, and a sense of peace pervades even during external stress. One woman from Naples wrote to Father Pio describing how her home, once filled with constant conflict, transformed within days of properly installing the consecrated key. Her husband, previously quick-tempered and distant, began showing more patience and affection, while her children started resolving conflicts instead of escalating them. These aren't coincidences, but the natural fruits of a home protected from the spiritual influences that often trigger our worst human tendencies. The protection offered by the key of Saint Benedict works on 3 distinct levels, creating a comprehensive shield for your household that Father Pio insisted was essential in our modern world. First, it acts as a deterrent against active spiritual attacks, those moments when negative forces deliberately target your family's peace and unity. Like a spiritual alarm system, the consecrated key alerts heavenly protectors when such forces approach, activating a response from Saint Benedict himself, who intercedes for your home's protection. Second, it provides a continuous cleansing effect, gradually removing negative spiritual residue that accumulates from arguments, stress, and the negative emotions we all experience and sometimes harbor. This purifying action works like a spiritual immune system, preventing the buildup of toxic energy that can gradually weaken your family's spiritual health. Third, and perhaps most importantly, it creates a sacred space that attracts positive divine influences, angels, saints, and grace. Itself flow more freely into homes protected by this powerful sacramental when it's properly consecrated and positioned. Father Pio's mystical insights revealed that homes with the properly consecrated key of Saint Benedict begin to show distinct signs of divine protection, subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. You might notice that tensions that once escalated quickly now dissolve before reaching a breaking point. Family members who struggled with nightmares or insomnia often report peaceful sleep within days of the key's proper installation. Some have witnessed more dramatic signs. Objects that caused discord mysteriously breaking or disappearing, problematic relationships naturally drifting away from family members, and unexpected blessings arriving at moments of greatest need. One family in Rome, following Father Pio's instructions precisely, placed the consecrated key by their entrance, and within a month, their chronically ill child began showing remarkable improvement that doctors couldn't explain. Another devotee reported that financial problems that had plagued them for years began resolving through unexpected opportunities that appeared out of nowhere after installing the key as Father Pio directed. These signs aren't superstitious coincidences, but the natural effects of aligning your home with divine protection. If you believe this teaching can change your life in the same way it changed the lives of so many devotees, write in the comments, "I am ready for this blessing." Subscribe to our channel to receive more powerful teachings from Father Pio that can transform your spiritual life. The step you take today by acknowledging your need for this protection could be the beginning of a profound transformation in your home. Father Pio often emphasized that our openness to spiritual help is itself the first step toward receiving it. The saint, who could bilocate and appear in multiple places simultaneously, explained that spiritual forces, both positive and negative, respond to our invitation. By commenting and subscribing, you're making a declaration of spiritual readiness that angels recognize and respond to. Don't underestimate the power of this simple act of faith. It could be the catalyst that begins your home's spiritual renewal through the protective power of Saint Benedict's key. Your spiritual vulnerability is something Father Pio could perceive. With his mystical gifts, often seeing attachments or influences around people that they themselves were completely unaware of. The key of Saint Benedict addresses this vulnerability by creating what Father Pio called a boundary of grace that negative influences cannot cross without permission. This protection becomes your spiritual muscle memory, automatically guarding your home even when you're not consciously focused on spiritual warfare. Many followers of Father Pio's teachings have described how their spiritual awareness heightened after properly installing the consecrated key, suddenly becoming conscious of negative influences they previously ignored or rationalized away. One man, a skeptical professor who followed his wife's wish to install the key, found himself increasingly sensitive to environments and relationships that drained his energy. What he once dismissed as normal fatigue, he now recognized as spiritual depletion from toxic encounters. This awakened discernment is one of the most valuable fruits of the key's protection. Like spiritual night vision that allows you to navigate darkness with greater awareness and safety, the spiritual protection provided by the key of Saint Benedict operates like an immune system rather than a one-time shield. Father Pio explained that the key creates a living, responsive defense that adapts to the specific spiritual challenges facing your household. For families struggling with conflict, the key's protective influence focuses on promoting peace and understanding. For those battling financial problems rooted in spiritual oppression, it works to break the patterns of scarcity and restriction. For households affected by depression or emotional darkness, it helps lift the spiritual weight that often underlies these conditions. The key's influence is both preventative and curative, stopping new problems from taking root while helping resolve existing ones. One family in Madrid, following Father Pio's exact instructions, placed the consecrated key by their door after years of inexplicable health problems that doctors couldn't diagnose. Within weeks, family members began recovering, and more importantly, they discovered and removed toxic materials in their home that had been contributing to their illness, a discovery they attribute to the heightened discernment that came after installing the key. Our capacity to receive spiritual protection is like a spiritual muscle. Father Pio taught that the more we exercise our faith in these divine safeguards, the stronger our spiritual immunity becomes against the forces that seek to disrupt our peace. The key of Saint Benedict, when approached with genuine faith rather than superstition, strengthens this spiritual muscle with each passing day. Many who followed Father Pio's guidance report that their initial skepticism gave way to profound conviction as they witnessed the key's effects in their daily lives. A businessman from Milan installed the key mainly to please his devout mother, but maintained his skepticism until he noticed that the chronic workplace conflicts that had plagued his career for years began resolving themselves in unexpected ways. Colleagues who had been antagonistic suddenly proposed compromises. Projects that had stalled inexplicably began moving forward. This wasn't mere coincidence, but the ripple effect of spiritual protection extending beyond his home to influence all areas of his life. Your openness to this protection, even if mingled with initial doubt, creates the space for these same transformative effects to manifest in your life. The power behind the key of Saint Benedict comes from three spiritual pillars that Father Pio emphasized in his teachings about this sacramental. The first pillar is authority. The key carries the authority of Saint Benedict himself, a saint whose power over evil was so formidable that demons fled at his command. When properly consecrated, the key bears the Church's apostolic authority to bind and loose spiritual forces, the same authority Christ gave to his apostles. This isn't symbolic power, but real spiritual authority that creates tangible effects in the physical world. The second pillar is faith. Not blind superstition, but informed, intentional belief in the communion of saints and their ability to intervene in our daily lives. Father Pio explained that our faith activates the key's potential, turning a blessed object into a conduit of grace that flows continuously into our homes. The third pillar is alignment. By installing the key, you're making a declaration that your home stands in alignment with God's protection, rather than remaining neutral territory in the spiritual realm. This alignment signals to both angelic and demonic forces where your household stands, creating spiritual clarity that itself becomes a form of protection. Your home's spiritual atmosphere affects everything from your mental health to your relationships, and even your physical well-being. Father Pio could perceive the spiritual quality of spaces he entered, often commenting on negative influences he detected in certain homes before the residents had shared any problems they were experiencing. The key of Saint Benedict works to transform this atmosphere by establishing what the saint called spiritual sovereignty, a clear declaration that your home operates under divine protection rather than being vulnerable to every passing influence. Many who have followed Father Pio's instructions report sensing this change almost immediately. a lightness or clarity that pervades their living space within days of properly installing the consecrated key. One family described it as the feeling of fresh air after a thunderstorm that persisted and deepened over time. Another spoke of arguments that would typically escalate, suddenly losing their momentum, as if the very air had been cleared of the tension that fueled conflict. These atmospheric changes aren't imaginary, but the natural effect of spiritual cleansing that the key initiates and maintains in your home. The transformation process that begins with the key of Saint Benedict follows a pattern that Father Pio observed repeatedly in those who implemented his guidance. It begins with subtle shifts in atmosphere that you might initially attribute to coincidence or improved mood. Then comes a period of purging, sometimes manifesting as increased tension as hidden problems rise to the surface to be resolved, rather than festering beneath a peaceful facade. This purging phase, while sometimes uncomfortable, is actually a sign that the key's protection is working, bringing to light what needs healing. Finally, a new equilibrium establishes itself, a sustainable peace that doesn't require constant effort to maintain because it's supported by spiritual protection rather than mere human willpower. One woman wrote to Father Pio describing how her home, which had felt oppressive for years despite beautiful decorations and perfect cleanliness, underwent exactly this transformation after she installed the consecrated key. The first week brought a strange lightheartedness she couldn't explain. The second week surfaced long-buried tensions between family members that finally found resolution. And by the third week, visitors were commenting on the different feeling of her home without knowing any changes had been made. Your sensitivity to spiritual realities is something Father Pio recognized as an innate human capacity that often lies dormant until awakened. The key of Saint Benedict, properly consecrated and installed, helps reawaken this spiritual perception that allows you to recognize both negative and positive influences in your environment. Many people report that after following Father Pio's instructions regarding the key, they begin noticing patterns they were previously blind to. Harmful relationships that consistently drain their energy, environments that negatively affect their mood, or conversely, people and places that consistently restore their spiritual strength. This heightened discernment isn't paranoia but spiritual maturity, the ability to test every spirit as Scripture advises. A teacher who installed the consecrated key found herself suddenly aware of which students came from troubled homes, allowing her to offer support that transformed several young lives. A doctor reported similar awareness with patients, finding himself intuitively drawn to ask questions that revealed underlying spiritual issues affecting physical health. This expanded perception doesn't make life more complicated, but actually simplifies it, helping you navigate decisions with greater wisdom and clarity about what truly nourishes your soul. The physical placement of the key of Saint Benedict follows what Father Pio called spiritual architecture, the understanding that physical spaces have spiritual dynamics that can either support or undermine your family's well-being. The key should be placed at the main entrance, ideally above the door or on the wall beside it, creating what the saint described as a threshold of grace that filters what enters your home. This position is not arbitrary, but based on the understanding that entrances are spiritual as well as physical thresholds where influences can be accepted or rejected. Many who follow this guidance report that visitors with negative intentions or influences often become uncomfortable or find reasons to leave quickly, while those bringing positive energy feel immediately at ease. One family noted that after properly placing the consecrated key, certain relatives who had consistently stirred conflict during visits began declining invitations or cutting visits short without explanation. Meanwhile, friendships that brought genuine joy and support spontaneously deepened. This natural filtering effect doesn't require your conscious effort. It operates continuously through the key's spiritual influence, creating boundaries that protect your home's atmosphere without requiring you to constantly monitor and manage external energies. Our spiritual heritage includes tools and practices that modern society often dismisses as superstition, but which Father Pio understood as practical spiritual technology with real effects. The key of Saint Benedict represents this heritage, ancient wisdom about spiritual protection that remains as relevant today as it was centuries ago. In fact, Father Pio insisted it was even more necessary in our modern environment filled with influences that subtly undermine spiritual well-being. Your connection to this spiritual heritage through the key creates a bridge between generations of faithful who have relied on these protections and found them effective. Many who install the key report a surprising sense of connection to something larger than themselves, a spiritual lineage that offers wisdom and support beyond their individual resources. One elderly man wrote that after placing the consecrated key as Father Pio instructed, he began having vivid dreams of his devout grandmother teaching him spiritual truths he had forgotten or never fully understood. Others report a renewed appreciation for traditional practices they had abandoned, finding fresh meaning in prayers and observances that once seemed rote or outdated. This reconnection to spiritual heritage doesn't pull you backward but actually propels you forward with the accumulated wisdom of generations supporting your journey. The spiritual protection offered by the key of Saint Benedict manifests in what Father Pio called circles of grace that expand outward from your home to influence all areas of your life. The first circle encompasses your immediate living space, creating the sanctuary effect that most people notice first, a palpable sense of peace and safety within their walls. The second circle extends to relationships, often healing tensions and misunderstandings that previously seemed intractable. Many report that after installing the key, long-standing family conflicts gently resolve themselves without the dramatic confrontations they had feared were necessary. The third circle influences work and creative endeavors, removing obstacles and opening paths that previously seemed blocked. Numerous followers of Father Pio's teaching have shared stories of professional breakthroughs, artistic inspiration, or business opportunities that appeared shortly after properly installing the consecrated key. One writer who had struggled with creative blocks for years found ideas flowing effortlessly within weeks of following the saint's instructions. A business owner facing bankruptcy reported that new clients suddenly appeared from nowhere, turning his financial situation around completely. These expanding circles of influence aren't magical thinking, but the natural extension of spiritual harmony from your center outward, affecting every aspect of your life. Your openness to divine protection determines how fully you experience the benefits of the key of Saint Benedict. Father Pio often told visitors that sacramentals work not through automatic magic, but through cooperative grace, our willingness to align with the protection they offer. The key creates an opportunity for divine intervention, but our choices either welcome or restrict this intervention in our daily lives. Many who've experienced the key's benefits report that its effects deepened as they consciously cooperated with the protection it offers, choosing forgiveness when tempted to hold grudges, practicing gratitude instead of complaint, and making decisions aligned with their deepest values rather than momentary impulses. A family in Florence installed the consecrated key during a time of severe financial hardship and relationship strain. While they noticed some immediate improvement in their home's atmosphere, the most significant changes came as they began making choices that aligned with the spiritual protection they had invited, prioritizing peace over being right, choosing generosity despite their limited resources, and practicing patience with each other's shortcomings. Within months, their circumstances had improved dramatically, not through magical intervention, but through the wisdom of choices made from a protected spiritual space. The relationship between faith and experience creates a virtuous cycle that Father Pio observed in those who properly implemented his teaching about the key of Saint Benedict. Initial faith, even if tentative, leads to experiences that then strengthen faith, which in turn opens the door to deeper experiences. This progressive unfolding of protection and blessing doesn't happen all at once but builds over time as you remain open to its influence. Many report that while they noticed immediate effects after installing the consecrated key, the most profound changes developed gradually over months as this cycle of faith and experience deepened. A young couple who placed the key by their door during a difficult pregnancy reported that their initial hope was simply for a healthy child. Not only was their son born perfectly healthy despite earlier complications, but they found their marriage strengthening, their financial situation improving, and opportunities appearing that they hadn't even thought to pray for. This expanding circle of blessing wasn't coincidental but the natural progression of protection that grows as faith meets experience. Your journey with the key of Saint Benedict follows this same pattern, beginning perhaps with specific concerns you hope to address, but potentially expanding into areas of blessing you haven't yet imagined as you remain open to divine protection in all its forms. The subtle signs of the key of Saint Benedict's effectiveness often appear in areas that seem unrelated to spiritual protection, but which Father Pio recognized as deeply connected to our spiritual well-being. Many report improvements in sleep quality within days of properly installing the consecrated key, deeper rest, fewer nightmares, and waking with a sense of peace rather than anxiety. Others notice changes in their mental clarity and emotional balance, finding themselves less reactive to provocations and more able to maintain perspective during challenges. Physical symptoms sometimes improve as well, particularly those exacerbated by stress or spiritual oppression. One woman with chronic migraines found their frequency dramatically reduced after placing the key as Father Pio instructed. Another reported that her child's unexplained skin condition cleared up completely within weeks. These improvements aren't separate from spiritual protection, but direct manifestations of it, as the body, mind, and spirit exist in constant interaction. Your physical and emotional well-being are legitimate areas to watch for the key's influence, not as superstitious proofs but as natural effects of reduced spiritual interference in your life's functioning. Your home's transformation through the key of Saint Benedict follows what Father Pio described as seasons of grace that unfold in a natural progression. The first season typically brings immediate relief, a lightening of atmosphere that most people notice within days of properly installing the consecrated key. The second season involves purification. As mentioned earlier, this might temporarily surface tensions or problems that need resolution, similar to how cleaning a long-neglected room must first create some disorder before establishing new order. The third season brings stabilization, a sustained peace and protection that becomes your new normal rather than a temporary improvement. Many followers of Father Pio's teaching have documented this progression in their homes, noting how the initial excitement of change eventually matured into quiet confidence in their home's protected status. One family kept a detailed journal of changes following their installation of the key, recording how initial dramatic improvements, fewer arguments, better sleep, eventually gave way to a steady state of harmony they described as the way home should feel but rarely does. This progression isn't imaginary but the natural unfolding of spiritual influence over time, like a garden that follows seasons of planting, growth, and eventually consistent harvest. The communal aspect of protection through the key of Saint Benedict extends beyond your immediate household to create what Father Pio called networks of grace connecting protected homes. Many who follow the saint's teaching report noticing unexpected connections forming with others who have similarly consecrated their homes, finding support, resources, and friendship precisely when needed. These connections aren't coincidental, but the natural alignment of spirits moving in the same direction of faith and protection. A neighborhood in a small Italian town where several families installed the key following Father Pio's instructions experienced a remarkable transformation. From isolated households barely interacting to a supportive community that shared resources, celebrated together, and supported each other through difficulties. This communal dimension of spiritual protection reveals that the key doesn't just shield individual homes, but helps rebuild the fabric of community that modern life often unravels. Your protected home becomes not just a sanctuary for your family, but potentially a node in a larger network of grace that strengthens everyone connected to it. This expansion from individual to communal protection represents the fullest expression of the key's purpose, not just saving individual households, but helping restore the interconnected spiritual ecosystem that sustains us all. The testimony of those who have followed Father Pio's teaching about the key of Saint Benedict forms a compelling body of evidence that spans decades and crosses cultural boundaries. From the businessman whose failing company mysteriously recovered after he installed the consecrated key, to the mother whose rebellious teenager gradually transformed into a responsible young adult, these stories share common patterns that suggest genuine spiritual influence rather than coincidence. A particularly striking case involved a home in Sicily that had experienced inexplicable disturbances for years. Objects moving, unexplained noises, and a persistent sense of heaviness that affected everyone who entered. After the family installed the properly consecrated key according to Father Pio's instructions, the disturbances ceased completely within 3 days. More impressive than the cessation of negative phenomena was the positive transformation that followed. Family relationships healed, chronic health problems improved, and opportunities that had eluded them for years suddenly materialized. Your experience with the key of Saint Benedict will be unique to your circumstances, but it forms part of this continuing testimony to the reality of spiritual protection that remains as accessible today as it was in Father Pio's time. Your decision to implement this teaching represents what Father Pio called a critical juncture, a moment of choice that can redirect your home's spiritual trajectory. The saint, with his ability to perceive spiritual realities invisible to most, often told visitors that certain decisions carried more weight than others in determining their spiritual path. Implementing proper protection for your home through the consecrated key of Saint Benedict represents one of these significant choices, not because the object itself has magical properties, but because your decision to install it signals a conscious alignment with divine protection rather than spiritual neutrality. Many who have followed Father Pio's guidance report that this decision marked a turning point they could clearly identify in retrospect, the moment when things began to change in ways they couldn't fully explain but deeply appreciated. A family facing seemingly insurmountable problems, financial ruin, serious illness, and relationship breakdown, marked the day they installed the consecrated key as the dividing line between their before and after. Though their circumstances didn't change overnight, they could trace the beginning of their gradual but complete restoration to that decisive act of faith. Your implementation of this teaching may similarly mark a before and after in your family's story, not through magical thinking but through the real spiritual alignment this action represents. Don't wait for a perfect moment to begin. The moment to transform your life through this powerful teaching of Father Pio is now, this very night, before you even fall asleep. The saint emphasized urgency in spiritual matters, not from fear but from wisdom, understanding that delay in implementing spiritual protection only extends unnecessary suffering. The proper steps are simple but must be followed precisely. Obtain the key of Saint Benedict from a reliable source, have it blessed by a priest using the proper blessing for sacramentals, and install it near your main entrance with a prayer of dedication. These steps require minimal effort but potentially yield life-changing results when approached with sincere faith rather than superstition. The protection described throughout this narrative isn't reserved for the specially gifted or spiritually advanced. It's available to anyone willing to take these simple steps with genuine intention. Countless families across generations have experienced the transformation that follows proper implementation of Father Pio's teaching about the key of Saint Benedict. Their testimony forms a cloud of witnesses, urging you to experience this same protection, not as a substitute for personal faith but as a practical expression of it. The choice now lies before you. Will your home remain vulnerable to influences you cannot see but which affect you daily? Or will you implement the protection that has transformed so many lives through this simple but powerful teaching from a saint who saw beyond the veil?